Let's now reflect on Defence Secretary Ben Wallace joining other NATO ministers in Brussels in the next 2 days to discuss this threat posed by the Chinese spy balloons, as well as, of course, increasing weapons supplies for Ukraine. Well, it comes as Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is under pressure to label China as a threat as part of the government's global security strategy. Ian Duncan-Smith joining Uyghur activists to protest against the Chinese governor's visit to Britain yesterday. And, of course, questions being asked about how secure our airspace is. Well, let's get more from Westminster. And our political correspondent, Olivia Utley, joining us. And, of course, Olivia, we had the Prime Minister saying they will do whatever it takes. But we've got quite senior figures, such as Lord Kim Darroch, former ambassador to the US, saying we can't really talk about, watertight defence because of the defence cuts that have taken place in recent decades.
Yes, absolutely. And that's definitely an issue which is affecting the whole of Europe and the US. As far as Sunak is concerned, this idea, this perceived weakness of his on China has been an area of contention among some areas of the factions of the Conservative Party for quite a while now. During the leadership contest between him and Liz Truss over the summer, it sometimes felt as though the two were in competition to show who was stronger on China. And Liz Truss labelled China the biggest threat to British security for a generation. Sunak used some strong language but didn't go quite as far. He said that we'd reached the end of the golden era with China, and that was pretty much as tough as it got. He's now under lots of pressure from Conservative China hawks, Ian Duncan-Smith at the helm of that, really, to label China an official threat. And this is, of course, after reports, it's being rumoured that Britain isn't in that great a place to deal with the possibility of Chinese surveillance balloons over our airspace. So those China hawks in the Conservative Party are putting lots of pressure on Rishi Sunak now. And as you say, it comes at the same time as there's lots of pressure from Defence Secretary Ben Wallace to raise the defence budget, something which Rishi Sunak refused to do, but managed to keep Ben Wallace in his cabinet. So that was a really tricky calculation that he had to make there. Now under pressure from both sides to raise that defence spending and to label China as an official threat in that integrated review, which is taking place on the 7th of March.
Yeah. Just to balance things, of course, we do have this former chief of the Air Defence, Air Chief Marshal Sir Michael Graydon, and we apologise for language, saying, don't get your knickers in a twist until we find out what's actually in the balloons. And, of course, I guess until we find out more from the United States, so they're looking at the electronic gadgetry they've recovered as to what the Chinese were actually up to.
Absolutely, and of course it should be said that some of these Conservative China hawks have been very strong on this China message for a really long time now. Ian Duncan-Smith will use almost any opportunity to put pressure on whoever the sitting Prime Minister is to take a tougher line on China. So there is an element of, perhaps, if you could put it as political opportunism here, but certainly this is a growing worry across the whole of the West, really, and we will see more pressure from the US here to get Europe raising its defence spending, raising its NATO spending to try and meet this threat from China. And Sunak will be feeling that.